Hello and welcome to this tutorial on construct validity. My name is Dr. Anita Knight. My students call me Dr. K, but let's roll up our sleeves and dive into this idea of construct validity. There's an old proverb that says laughter is the best medicine, so I like to start with something funny. And I heard this joke about research, and I'd like to share it with you. It says, why did the research team feel like jumping out of the basement window? Because after collecting all the data, someone finally said, wait, should we have thought about statistical tests first? Nothing like a little post hoc panic to make you want to escape. Yeah, as uncomfortable as jumping out of a basement window sounds, that's how uncomfortable it can be to find at the end of the study that there's major problems with construct validity or statistical conclusion validity after carefully controlling for everything else. So let's dive into this topic of construct validity. Well, first, what is a construct? A construct is a working concept or idea. And so now that we know what a construct is, what is validity? Well, according to the Knight and Tetro text called Research Methods and Program Evaluation, Key Concepts, a Study Guide, second edition, this is a study guide that kind of breaks down some of the big concepts in research and statistics to seek to simplify them. And on page 41, it says validity refers to whether a test is truthful or genuine, and also captures the idea that validity involves whether an instrument measures what it sets out to measure. So then if we look back at construct validity, we're looking at a construct or a working concept and whether that concept is truthful or genuine, or whether the assessment we use to measure the construct actually measures the construct which it sets out to measure. So, for example, if we make this more specific and applied, if we want to measure the construct or concept of empathy in counselors in training, is the Interpersonal Reactivity Index, the IRI, developed by Dr. Mark Davis in 1980, the correct measurement to use to measure the construct of empathy? According to Kasdan 2024 on page 74 of the text, Kasdan says contract validity addresses the presumed cause or explanation of the causal relation between the intervention or some variable and the outcome. So let's break this down. Again, contract validity is about measuring what you want to measure. It involves evaluating instrumentation closely in order to improve validity. So we can tie the construct in the scenario we're discussing empathy to the outcome, empathy levels as measured by the Interpersonal Reactivity Index. So let's ask a question just to review and recap. What explains the relationship between the intervention or manipulation of the independent variable, such as empathy training, and the outcome variable, such as empathy as measured by the IRI? Is it external validity, A? B, retest reliability? C, construct validity? Or D, all of the above? Well, if you said C, construct validity, you were right? And so if we look at these options, external validity really looks more at generalizability, taking the study out and generalizing it beyond the sample of the study. Retest reliability looks at that consistency of assessment, whether we can test and test again and get the same or highly correlated results. Then construct validity is looking at whether that assessment is really capturing the essence of the construct and the independent variable or the intervention, and explaining that relationship there. So let's take a deeper dive. When you look at internal validity, which is a concept we've discussed in past videos, internal validity looks at really examining whether the internal parts of the study designate that the outcome of the study is due to the independent variable. And if you think of internal and independent, both starting with that IN, when we look at that term internal, coming from the etymology of the word, in some languages meaning bowels or the internal parts, you can think of the internal workings of the study. Is it internally valid? And so anything that's related to design aspects or internal to the study is going to be associated with establishing internal validity, data evaluation validity, construct validity, statistical conclusion validity. These are all parts of establishing internal validity that we want to be aware of. The Kasdan course textbook has some tables that are really helpful, and one of the tables looks at some of the different threats to this form of validity that we've been talking about. Attention and contact accorded the client, which looks at the extent to which an increase of attention to the client, participant rather than or in addition to the intervention could plausibly explain the effects attributed to the intervention. Single operations and narrow stimulus sampling. Kasdan says sometimes a single set of stimuli, investigator, other facet of the study that the investigator considers irrelevant may contribute to the impact of the experimental manipulation. For example, one experimenter or therapist may administer all the conditions. At the end of the study, one cannot separate the manipulation from the person who implemented it. In general, two or more stimuli or experimenters allow one to evaluate whether it was the manipulation across different stimulus conditions, rather than just that one therapist or one trainer for empathy training in our specific example. There's experimenter expectancies and also demand characteristics that can be threats as well. Let's move on to data evaluation validity. Data evaluation validity refers to how accurately the data analysis process leads to valid conclusions about the effects in a study. It ensures that the statistical methods and decisions used properly reflect the true outcomes of the experiment. So some questions, what are some questions to keep in mind? What do you have to think about when it comes to data evaluation validity? You want to think about experimenter or primary investigator decisions, like how do we handle missing data? How do we handle outliers? Which subscales or total scores do we use for analyses? Do we need to create composite variables such as global empathy on the Interpersonal Reactivity Index? And Kasdan talks about a number of threats to data evaluation validity, from low statistical power to misreading or misinterpreting the data. So let's just talk about a couple. Low statistical power is one that you're likely aware of, but if there's a small sample size, there may not be enough statistical power to do the analysis that you want to do. So there are tools like G-Power to help with this. But this means you do not have enough statistical power to find the effect of the intervention reliably. Power is a likelihood of rejecting the null hypothesis or finding differences when the null hypothesis is actually false and a difference is there. If you reject the null and it's true, this is a type 1, not a type 2. This is kind of a catchy jingle to help you remember. About 15 years ago in one of my research classes, we did an exercise where we came up with some different jingles, and we developed this one together in class. If you reject the null and it's true, this is a type 1 and not a type 2. So hopefully that helps you remember the difference. But if not, then this photo that you may have seen in some stats books or online that talks about the difference between a type 1 and type 2 error gives you a good visual. I like to use this one. So type 1 error is, let's see, this guy is at the dentist, and the dentist examines his tooth and tells this man, "You're pregnant." Right? So that's a type 1 error, a false positive, because obviously this x-ray of his teeth is not an indicator that he's pregnant. So that would be a false positive or a type 1 error. A type 2 error, a woman goes in that is pregnant and has an ultrasound and sees the baby's heartbeat and is truly pregnant, but the doctor says you are not pregnant. So this is a false negative. The report says you're not pregnant, right? And so this is missing evidence that is there. So keep this in mind when you think about the difference between type 1 and type 2 errors. And low statistical power makes it more likely that we would make a type 2 error and is a threat to our data evaluation validity or statistical conclusion validity. So is subject heterogeneity, variability in the procedures, unreliability of measures, restricted range of measures, error in data recording, multiple comparisons, and misreading or misinterpreting data. But that's probably enough for this video. We'll talk more about those things in the future. I hope this gives you some concepts to contemplate when it comes to thinking about threats to data evaluation or statistical conclusion validity. God bless you, and see you next time.